sir. I appreciate you. Robert, for folks not familiar with you, do you mind just starting with like a real brief introduction of who you are and your success in the real estate business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Robert Colello. I run a real estate team here in San Diego, California. Moved out here from the East Coast in '07, knowing nobody. So literally started from scratch. My wife was pregnant with our fourth child, and we had 3 children under the age of 5. So, I had some outside pressures, but you know what? Those pressures will motivate you either get out or get up. And then for my success, it moved me up. And I actually, my business is a little unique in the sense that I started off with for sale by owners expireds because I was 26 when I got in the business. So not a lot of people had a high trust when I lived in Miami because most of my wife's friends' husbands were 20 years my senior. So therefore, I got on the phone as a cold call cowboy and smiled, dialed, and made a pile. When I moved to San Diego with that confidence, because like I told you earlier, they told me it would take 9 months to sell your first home when I was at Gold Coast Real Estate School. And I sold 11 homes in my first 90 days by making cold calls, by calling first buyers who just listed, just solds. When I came out here, I continued doing the same thing, right? And by 2009, I had this kind of epiphany. If I could find a few people that can refer me a lot of people, I'd rather manage those relationships than a bunch of relationships with people that don't know me, like me, or trust me, just for me. So I made a shift to going all referral based. My wife wanted to kill me because that year I went from breaking 100 grand GCI the year before to going to 73,000. But what happened after that next 12 months, I went to 304, 470, 600, on, all the way up to 7 figures where I've had multiple 7-figure years in GCI. So I run a predominantly referral-based 95% business. I got 4 beautiful kids from the age of 18 to 24. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Aurora, for 25 years. And a little bit about my story, I can sum it down to 3 Ds, divorce, dyslexia, and drug addiction. And I just say that for anybody that's listening, that's maybe found themselves feeling passed over, or maybe they didn't have the best circumstances as a child to catapult into life, so they thought. Well, those are the circumstances I had. My parents were married and divorced to each other twice by the time I was 6. My mom was 19. My dad was 20. I spent time between Oklahoma and Long Island. And then when we finally settled in Long Island and went up to Syracuse, where my dad's from, I was diagnosed with dyslexia after my dad left my mom for the last time. And it was a lot coming at me at a little age. And by the time I was in my early teens, I started dibbling and dabbling in drugs, which landed me in 7 months of inpatient drug rehab between the age of 18 and 19. And that's actually how I ended up from New York to Miami. And I've been clean and sober going on 25 years now. So praise God, it stuck for me. And but I can just tell you that this industry is awesome because so many of us can get in. It's also going to take you as far as you're going to allow yourself to be taken. And that's why I just mentioned the 3 Ds. I had the honor to speak with Ed Milet and Gary Brecka at Brent Gove's event in Cabo. And I said, hey, what are your 3 Ds? And I think it's a real important question, because going into this market that is shifting and changing, if you are going to rely on your self-confidence from the last 10 years to get you through this market, you're probably going to be pretty shaken. But if you're going to allow yourself to understand that you got everything you need, your life experiences are going to carry you through, and you're very industrious and you can learn anything you need to learn, then you're not going to allow excuses to set you back and get you away from the lead of the pack, which you belong to be.
Yeah, it's well said. And I love the fact that you know your dates. And this is one of the things that I know as a successful entrepreneur, but also with successful listing agents, whatever business you're in, you must have a time in your schedule where you're looking at the numbers that are relevant. Because otherwise you won't know what to go tell. I always make the analogy of, it's 4th down, 4th quarter. You're at the other end of the field. There's 5 seconds left on the clock. What play are you going to run? And to a T, when I say that in front of a room full of people, and I have often, everybody says the same thing. Throw a Hail Mary, throw a Hail Mary. And I say, wait. Look at the scoreboard. You're up by 3. Now what play are you going to play? Oh, take a knee. And if you don't know the scoreboard, you don't know what play to run. And the same is true in our business. So I love hearing you say that. And every listing agent worth their salt I've ever talked to has said the same thing. I'm curious. There's this sort of the seller lag, right? And the time a seller goes to make a decision to sell their home is a pinned point in time. And usually they're referencing what's happened before that. And by the time they make that decision to the time that they actually list the home is another time period, right? And that all is opportunity for the seller to be confused about what the price should be. And so I want to ask you about how you deal with that, right? Because when that phone call comes in, the referral or, the repeat client in your case, or wherever it might be, an expired listing, as well. I heard you say that too.
Yep.
That seller has some preconceived notions. And so would you mind taking me through that process from that first conversation through to they just signed the listing agreement? How are you framing in terms of pricing? And we can skip past things like the walkthrough unless you think that there's a pricing conversation that you do there that you want to talk to. Let's just talk about pricing, both the pricing strategy, and then also I want to talk about reductions as well.
Yeah. So I'm glad you said that, because you have to have a duplicatable and repeatable process that is held together by standards. And the person that's going to hold the standards is you as a listing agent. Trust me, a seller is not going to hold standards going through divorce based on the price. They're going to try to get as much as possible. So the way it works for me is it happens before we ever get to the table. It happens in the pre-qualification call. It happens when I'm asking the questions about, their home. I'm asking them questions about, what is a positive and what is a negative about their home. More specifically, please describe your home for me. Is there anything positive or negative that you feel would have an effect on the sale? And then you'll hear them, whether they're taunting up their house or not, or if they're giving you some really good nuggets of they know there's some deficiencies. Now, if they don't give you any deficiencies, that they think their home's worth more than it is. And then you're going to know that when you ask them the price. So in the pre-approval, I'm always asking, what price do you want to list your home for when we meet? And then they tell you one price. And then I ask them, hey, if I had an all cash buyer, and then I'll just go really low, and they came in with this price, would you consider it? And if they pause and it's like $200,000 difference or $100,000 difference, now we understand there's some movement there. And then I always ask this question, whether I'm working with a seller or buyer, during the initial call: do I have permission to be completely honest with you during our relationship? And I've never met anybody, Brian, that has told me no to that. Now, the reason I ask them in the beginning is because when I get to their home, I'm going to do a 4-step process. I am going to walk the house with them. I am going to sit down and go over my marketing with them. I am going to go over comps. We are going to go over the listing paperwork, but I go over the price then. I don't send them the price ahead of time, because if they're dead set on, in my market, let's say 2 million, but this property is worth 1.8. Okay. Like, I'll give you an example. I just listed 2 canceled listings in the last quarter, and they both were listed with 2 other agents for 1.6 and change. One just closed yesterday. It was listed for 1.688 million by the previous agent. We just closed escrow yesterday, and I actually had represented the buyer and the seller, and that was at 1.510. So they took a considerable price reduction going into this because I listed their home for 1.449. And the way I was able to do that was when I got there and said, hey, we got into pricing. Remember the part about me being honest with you? They go, yeah. I go, what I'm about to say, you might not like, you might not agree with, but I'm going to ask you to be open, because this is empirical data that neither you or I can manipulate. It is what it is. It's 4 doors down. It's 2 blocks up. It's here in your backyard. And this is the same data that Redfin and Zillow all have access to, which means the buyers that are looking at your home are looking at the same data. And we left there with almost $150,000 price reduction from what they were at before. Oh, and they put $22,000 into the house with me too, painting, doing things they need to do, restaging the house, and they paid for it. And I won't get into commissions, but it was a good commission. I'm not a discount broker. So the price happens from the pre-qual, and then you're continuing to ask them questions just to get their temperature. And one of the questions I ask them when I sit down with them is, what are your biggest concerns? And a seller will let you know that price is a concern. So I don't answer any of the questions until they all get on paper. And then I start going through them. And then that way now we're pre-warmed up before we get to the comps. And I remind them, Brian, it's really simple. You're not buying your home. I'm not buying your home. A buyer's buying your home, which means that your home's worth as much a willing and able buyer's willing to buy it for, so that's how I handle the pricing. Is I'm just fearlessly honest with them, and I ask permission up front.
Before we get to the house, what kind of research are you doing? Are you sending a pre-listing packet? Another nuanced question. I like the 3-tier pricing strategy personally, but I know a lot of agents do other things as well. So I'm curious how that plays into your research. What kind of price range you're presenting to a seller, and why then do you do with the comps? What sort of comps do you select? And not that we're trying to game the system, but which kind of comps don't we select and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, this is really good question. And for all the listeners, pay attention to those kind of questions, because the devil is truly in the details. If you think you get out of real estate school and you get a suit and a smile and a nice car that you can barely afford and all these things to show up to a listing and you're going to just take it, you're going to get in this market, it's going to be very compromised situation for you. So the way that we handle is the same. Everything's the same. Like my core values for our business is PEEPS: productive, efficient, effective, profitable, and selfless, right? And you can't have a profitability if you're not profitable and someone else is profitable, and you both are profitable, and you can't do it unless you're selfless. So selfless to me is telling the truth at all times. And the way we do that is very simple. We first do that pre-qual. Then we send them a pre-listing package. In the pre-listing package, it's going to have my numbers. It's going to have the comps. It's going to have marketing strategies. It's going to have an example. See, more's caught than taught. So you can talk about how great your videos are or talk about how great you are. But why don't you just put a YouTube button in there to your client testimony channel? Let them hear it from your clients. Why don't you put an exact, couple marketing pieces from properties that you've marketed, from high end to medium to whatever. And that's what we do. So it basically goes from the beginning of who I am, what I do, why you should trust me, who EXP is and why we're reputable. And then at the end, the pricing. And on the pricing, it's a direct link to the MLS. And there's 2 versions. Number 1, the detail. That's where they see the pictures and all the things they can read. And the other one is just a CMA summary, kind of like spreadsheet style, at least in our MLS. So if I get a highly analytical person, that's what they're going to want to look at, right? And if I get someone to see all the pictures and everything, they're going to look at that. And often they look at both of them. But I'm sending it directly from the MLS. And it's important you do that, because that's where all the data is. We let them know. Now, when we get there, right, I don't give them a price suggestion. Okay.
Sorry, can I ask you a real quick question about that? Because I don't know your MLS and how they do their CMA. Does it suggest a price or a price range, or are you just purely sending comps?
I'm just sending comps.
Gotcha. Okay.
When I'm looking at the comps, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the property that is the closest to their property. One of the other things I do with sellers is when I'm doing that pre-qualification, saying what's positive and what's negative that can have an effect on your sale. At the end of that questioning, I say, can you do me a favor before I come over tomorrow or next Wednesday or whenever it is? Can you please send me a text message and send me pictures of your home? Send me one of the outside, one of the ends, the backyard, front yard, send me your kitchen, your bathroom, so on and so forth. So I'm getting them to send me the pictures. So I have live pictures, not from the last listing 10 years ago, not from when they tried listing it 6 months ago and it looked like it came out of Glamour magazine. I'm seeing, what am I dealing with? And then I'm comparing that with comps. And then now I'm already kind of pre-framing myself where I think the range is going to be. And to be honest with you, I'm not giving them a bunch of choices. It's one price. I'll have 3 net sheets in there because I could be surprised, but this is where we could end up. This is hopefully where we're going to be, but this is where we're going to start, right? We're going to start here because pricing is your number 1 marketing tool. We were showed this, and I tell them the same thing, that we were showed this back during the foreclosure era, that banks had so much inventory, they could not hold it. And they literally were putting homes on the market for $300,000 that worth $500,000. And guess what? In the worst market in U.S. history, they were getting bid up to $510,000, which told us something. You cannot underprice a home. But the homes that were on the market for $550,000 were staying on the market and not selling, which told us you can overprice a home. And since we're in a pricing war, in a beauty contest. We're only going to be able to make your home as beautiful as we can. Now price is the only issue. And we're going to lead with a strong price so we can get a bunch of offers so we can get your home sold for as much money as possible.
So we do this research, and you said you're bringing the 3 net sheets. I'm assuming they're staying in the quote unquote briefcase.
Yep.
And then we done our tour. We sat down. We talked about all the amazing marketing you're going to do to earn the commission that you charge, and make sure the home gets sold for the highest amount in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of hassles. And then we're going to talk about price. So can you talk me through that conversation from like the very beginning? So you just showed me your marketing, and do we talk about the listing agreement first, or are we going to talk about the price first?
So when we sit down, I'm going to ask them of any concerns they have and what their expectation of an agent is. And they're going to give me everything, right? Then we're going to go right into the marketing. You have to build value. And I send this ahead of time in a digital, right? But I find though, a lot of people are busy like we are, and they haven't looked at it all the way. That's fine. They don't have to. You want to make sure that you are determining value for yourself, whether they determined it before you got there or you're helping them determine it when you're there. I can tell you, like, I sold a $5 million listing this year, and I got over 3% on my side, a lot more on a $5 million listing. And matter of fact, when I was there, it was a 30-minute listing presentation, and the lady had done thorough research on me. And the package, she goes, yep, now I can understand why you get what you get. Did not argue with me at all. So whether you get it like that or you get it with someone that you're there for an hour and a half and you're substantiating value, I find that it's not an argument with anybody. It's just explaining what we're doing, and they get it. Once we get past the marketing, we go into the comps. Okay. Now we look at the comps, and I go through the active, pending, and sold. And at the end of that, I ask them, you throw it back on them, right? Because if you're just telling people things, you're just speaking at them. You got to ask questions. You got to get them engaged. So then at the end, when we're showing them the comps, so what price do you feel we should use to create value in the eyes of the buyer to get a buyer determined to write an offer in your house versus the competition? And then be quiet. Let them talk. I don't even tell them at that point. I make them tell me, and they usually say, well, what do you think? I'm like, listen, like I told you, behind this paper right here on the other side are 3 net sheets. There's already numbers on them. I'm not going to make my numbers up on the fly. They're already done by an escrow company, but I want to know what you think. And then I'm going to show you what I believe as a professional to be the reality. Okay. And I always have those last. And the way that I set my folder up, I do it the same way every time. I have the business cards of everybody on my team. So when I open it up, they see that there's a team here. They see it on the marketing. They feel it. When I was a single agent, I had 1 card in there, and I'm, just to be as professional as possible. But I did the same thing. On the left-hand side of the folder, right-hand side is the contract. And there's no price in there. Commission, everything's in there. No price yet. I will write that in there. On the other side, is the tax roll, and is the comps and the net sheets, which I don't let them see. I don't let them see that, okay? And the reason I don't let them see that is I don't want them to start fixating on this number and arguing with me about it. I want them to give me a chance to go through everything, and then I want to hear their number.
How often are you getting somebody who is going beyond your 3 net sheets?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning you got your kind of, it sounded like low, medium, high net sheets there. How often, when you ask that question about what do you think, are they going above and beyond?
Oh, are they going above? Or I thought, how often do I get above their net sheet? So, that's like a 50-50, and it depends on the situation. Like I'll say a couple last listings I had, divorce, one person had a bridge loan, another person is retiring. They're more aggressive, because they need that money. Yeah, they need it. And what I say to those people is real simple. I respect and appreciate your opinion on your value of your home, and you have a beautiful home. And once again, I'm not buying it. Are you going to rebuy it? I'll sell it to you. Once you sign the contract, I have no problem selling it to you again. They usually laugh. So since you're not buying it, right, and I'm not buying it, then the buyer's going to buy it, right? Yeah. So what I know to be true, and once again, Brian, I could be completely honest with you when I say what I'm about to say, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
What I have found over 20 years of doing this business, no buyer cares about how much you need to get out of this home when they go to rationalizing what they're going to offer you for your home. Because you want 100,000 more because you need to pay your mortgage off or your credit cards or whatever that looks like. They are not taking that into consideration when they're writing an offer. What they're taking in consideration is what they can see here, like I showed you on the Zillows and on the Redfins and on the Realtor.coms. They're looking at recent sales. They have all this data in front of them. Their agents give them all the data. So why do you feel your home's worth $150,000 more than your neighbor's home, which is a model match that just sold last month? And then be quiet. Yeah. And let them talk themselves. Well, and you're going to hear a lot of I need, and then you can go, I understand you need. And what I am here to do is make sure that we leave no money on the table. I'm also here to make sure that you don't go out in the market and express two things to the buying population, which is the kiss of death. You know what that is? They're like, what? Well, when you have an overpriced listing, you're expressing these two very things. Either A, you're completely out of touch with the market, or you're completely unrealistic and irrational. Those are not the messaging that you want to have, because people will pass on your listing because they understand once they buy your property, they're going to need to now do an inspection. There's going to be a request for repairs. We're not done. And then I bring them also, Byron, it's very important that agents do this. Do not just talk about the listing and the sale. Talk about what is going to come. Talk about a pattern interrupt. Tell them up front. In our neck of the woods, we have a thing called termites. Okay. You need to let them know, like, hey, from Baja, Mexico to San Clemente, California is the second most concentrated area in the world of termites. So there are two kind of homes. There's those that are going to have termites and those that will have, or that do have termites. You're probably in the camp that has them. So do plan on this. It's going to be between $1,500 and $5,500, which will be asked of you, which 99% of the sellers do grant this to the buyer. So that will come off. And then understand, as perfect as your house is, it is a beautiful house. There are things that you and I can't see because you know why? And they're like, why? We're not contractors. We're not inspectors. They will find between $2,500 and $6,000 on average of things that need to be addressed that are reality. My job is going to be able to mitigate that, because I'm going to be now negotiating not just one time, not two times, but three times, and possibly a fourth time value if the appraisal came in low for some reason. So let them know not to pack their bags up after it goes into escrow mentally. I'm not just talking physically. If a seller has packed their bags mentally, as soon as they go into escrow, as soon as that request for repairs comes in, as soon as the termite request comes in, as soon as the appraisal comes in low, they have this outrageous response that kills deals. And that's another reason that we close 97% of my transactions close. Like if I put 100 deals in escrow, I'm closing 97 of them. You know, I'm losing 3. And that's like for like mold we didn't know about, or like a pool leak or some crazy thing that the seller doesn't want to address. But the deal is, my sellers don't fall out of escrow for those things because I've addressed that up front, and I'm talking to them about that with their price. I'm talking to them about that before I leave. So when that happens, I can go back because, oh, by the way, that listing that was listed for $1.688 million by the past agent that I listed for $1.449, we not only had him put $22,000 in, we did sell it for $1,501,000. I also was, they agreed to a $14,395 request for repairs. Wow. Because I had talked about this stuff at the table. I didn't just talk to them when it happened.
I know some agents future pace them at the listing appointment after they've signed the agreement. Some will do it right before they sign the agreement and cook it into the agreement. And some just, they price it, hope it doesn't happen, but when it happens, they have scriptings. How do you handle it?
So there's two ways to handle it, depending on the market we're in. If this market turns back into the 2009 market, those are built-in price reductions at the listing table. That, hey, 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30 days, like these, this is what's going to happen. Because once again, the escalator going up, we don't want to start 2 steps behind the 8 ball and then we're going to be 5 steps behind. It's going to be insurmountable for the seller. 2, do not ever, just take it out of your mind right now. Take it out of your mouth. Price reduction. Do not ever say that to a seller. Do you know why?
Because you're the one reducing the price.
Yes. Also, you are telling them you're taking something away from them.
Yeah.
And now you're telling them you're taking something away from them they really never had. So what I choose to use is price adjustment. We're going to adjust your price to meet the standard or the expectation of the market, because obviously we've had this many showings and we've had this happen and that happen, and you just had to paint the picture for them with the price adjustment. You can't tell them about a price adjustment when you're about to do it. You need to tell them about the price adjustment at the listing table, and we choose to do it like this. Like I said before, we'll know in the first 7 to 14 days based on the traffic and the offers. You'll be accepted, rejected, or ignored. And I walk them through that. So then now come 17 days from now, or come 7 days from now, hey, listen, we've had 2,700 people on Zillow look at your home. We've had 60 saves. We've had 62 saves. 31 people have seen your house. That means half the saved people have come seen it, and we've had 0 offers. What is that telling you? And now you got to throw back on them. Do you think we're accepted? Do you think we're rejected, or being ignored right now? And you have to be willing not to say anything. When you ask these questions, you have to be willing to be quiet. Be quiet. It's uncomfortable, but it is very true. The first person that talks wins, because guess what you sound like? Guess what I sound like when I talk too much, when I ask that question? It sounds desperate. It sounds pushy, and it sounds like I'm trying to get them to do something that's in whose benefit more than theirs? Mine. But when I ask a strong question with confidence, kind, don't be mean, kind but confident, and I leave it out there, to thy own self be true. They're not stupid. And if they give you a dumb answer, well, then you just continue to bring them back to the reality. But you have to be quiet. You have to be quiet. And you'll see that quiet will move mountains.
Well said. Yeah. I always looked at it as either a market adjustment or a market correction, because I always wanted them to see it. It's not me. It's the market who's speaking. And here's what they're telling us. I like your three things. That's a great script. Man, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you in Miami. I hope I get some time to come see your session. If not, just know it's only because I've got other things going on, because I can't wait to hear what people have to say about your buyer consultation.
Thank you so much. Brian, it's been great. I always want to call you Byron with the way you spell your name.
No worries, man. You got it right, though. You got it right.
Hey, it's been great. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.